Hey TV fans, Bored Now back with you. On this video I will be talking about Fatal Attraction Season 1, Episode 3. The episode is called The Watchful Heart. So last episode for this week. This one flips the perspective in the past to Alex. So we actually see the events of the show so far when it comes to her and Dan in the past from her point of view, and we get a little bit extra like nearer the end of the episode, but it's just that extra viewpoint which really dives deeper into how fragile she is, how unstable she is, some of the psychology, but also it just shows a little bit extra of how she's been manipulating things to her advantage, and how like at a moment's thing, like just anything can set her off almost. But it just gets a little bit deeper into her psyche and little touches of her personal history as well. And I quite like this stuff because it allows Lizzie Kaplan to shine a bit more as Alex. Like up to now I haven't been that into her character, and I've not been into the relationship with Dan. I feel there has been a lack of spark between those two, but that's not really on Kaplan. I just didn't think they had that much chemistry. I know some people have disagreed. I've seen people say they think they do have good chemistry, but also just because some of the writing has let that stuff down as well. But seeing things from her perspective just gave her that platform to shine more in the role, and I thought she was very good in this actress. Sorry, in this episode actually. So we start to see then she manipulates things with certain clients, like she'll tell a lie. Like there's a client who goes into hospital and it's clear that Alex has put her there, but she just claims to Dan that then the client was in good health and on the mend, whereas in reality she went in with like a brain tumour and she never got better. She dies. So Dan later finds out that Alex was lying about that. And we just see her learn certain things. So she learns at the bar that night about him missing out on being a judge, and she sees her opportunity. She finds an excuse to stay behind and start manipulating him and start getting closer. We also see that she's the one who set off the sprinklers, which probably isn't too surprising. You could imagine that, hey, they have this random thing where the sprinklers set off, and then later on they get together for the first time. So it's probably not too surprising that she's the one who set them off. Even though I said in the last review it seemed like a bit of this show's idea of a meet cute. But there's just some things where also I got the impression some of this stuff might be in her head, like some of like the impression she was getting off different people, because you've got the woman who hired her boss, who is a close friend of Dan's and has known him for years. There's suggestions, and she gets a little bit jealous of the amount of time they spend together, like almost like she has to compete with this woman. Because there's a scene where there's a line from her boss where it's after she's been recommended to work with Alex, or like Dan has recommended her for that case, which has given her more power. So the woman makes a crack about how I hired you, so you should be smart, but then maybe it's not such a good choice, and she's just being tongue-in-cheek, making a gag. But the way that scene played, it could have been just Alex imagining that comment, or just it's a real comment, but like she just is overreacting to it, just taking it like literally as a swipe at her. But we get a little bit more on her personal history because she's on the phone at one point to, it's a female, I'm not sure if it's a member of her family or if it's an old friend or something like that, but it's just someone who, it's an awkward conversation, and you can tell the woman, whoever it is, feels Alex needs to get help, and that paints a picture that Alex is just finding excuses not to get treatment for her mental health because, like, she's thrown herself into this new job and she's just determined not to get help. But also there's a vibe from that scene, and this woman doesn't feel comfortable being around Alex anymore, and that she's trying to get off the phone as quickly as possible. And then there's also the childhood friend Paul, who I think could be an ex-lover, but certainly someone Alex has known for years, and he's like a repairman in like her building, but she's mad with him because he hasn't like returned any of her calls for years, and just gets the impression then he's just been sort of selfish and allowed himself to grow attached. And she makes this sort of sly threat towards him about her working at a law firm, because it's implied that he has a criminal background. So she makes this crack about, like, I could be bad if you're a criminal, or you know, it's something like that. Or she says, like, for a criminal or for a friend, I could be good. It's that sort of thing where she's implying some sort of blackmail, depending on if he like returns to being her friend or whatever. And we see it later on in the episode, then she's setting things up to, anything she does bad, she's making other people look bad, so she's setting it up so it looks like she's innocent and they could be the one involved. And Paul's one of them. Like, she plants some fingerprints of his to make it look like something she's done is actually him, and different things like that. But that was some solid stuff, and it definitely gave Kaplan some more stuff to play with, and to show how like on the edge this woman is, but also how sly and cute she can be, like how manipulative she can be with certain lines and certain icy moments. Because also, like, that's the impression with Dan, like it's not just that she's got a crush on him, it's almost like he could be anyone, but she just sees this as she talks to a friend at one point on the phone, like this opportunity, like he's a lawyer, he's a hotshot lawyer, and he wants to give you this opportunity. Now again, I got the impression that could be in Alex's head, then she might just be hearing that just because that's what she wants to hear, but she takes that advice and starts pursuing it and using Dan as like an opportunity. So we just see little things throughout the episode that just add a little bit more to the scenes with her and Dan, just seeing how she has tweaked things and manipulated things, and how she has just made Dan look quite bad, which has affected his case, how bad his case looks when it comes to like killing her later on. Because in the present scene, like, him and Mike go round and talk to like one of the ex-clients, and the client is clearly very down on Dan and doesn't want anything to do with him, so he clearly blames her for like the past. You don't get that much in the present with the family. You get like an awkward exchange with Beth and Dan when they meet for the first time in years, and they bring up some awkward memories about when he first went into jail and the stuff with Ellen, and that's a pretty dry, pretty bland scene. We also get some like hints at the film, some like nods to the film, because we've got this recurring rabbit that keeps appearing, wink wink, nudge nudge. And also we get a scene like we got in the film where after they have seemingly agreed not to see each other again, that being Alex and Dan, Alex shows up at his house anyway, and like as a way to make a threat of what she can do. Because another thing she does is that scene on the beach, we see how she's actually setting that stuff up, because when you've got the bit with the dog and Dan is distracted by the dog, she takes a picture of her and Dan in the same shot. So that's definitely something she can use against him later. And she shows up at the family home and introduces herself as a work colleague, and that's just a way to make a threat. And Dan goes off the deep end and threatens her, and in that scene he's quite aggressive, so it seems like it's just a way to set up then he still could have killed her, because he does make a direct threat to her in that scene. It's like, I know what you did with Tracy, who's the client, and stay away from my family, I'll ruin your career, is the line. And one of the best scenes is the scene with Alex in the bar, where she keeps returning to that bar that her and Dan like first started to get to know each other in, and the whole thing got set off because she just keeps returning, expecting him to come back every now and again. And this is just a sign that she likes routine, and she's been enjoying the routine of her and Dan meeting at this bar, and she's just not accepting that he's not returning to that spot anymore. So that great thing on the telephone where she's suddenly going into more unhinged mode is good stuff. I think Lizzie Kaplan is doing a good job in this episode, even though I'm not that into the stuff with her and Dan overall. But I think in this episode there's some good stuff from her perspective, and I think her performance is very solid. So I actually quite enjoyed this episode overall, I would say, even though some of it can seem a bit redundant, because it's just the flip of things. But it was good to get a bit more with Alex. That was pretty strong stuff, I thought. So that's episode 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.